All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today for one of our winter semester skill sessions. We're real excited today to be diving into a little bit about projection mapping. And we have Ian here from the University of Texas Austin Club to share some of his experience with us, and I'll pass it over to you, Ian.
All right, cool. Let me screen share. Yeah. Sorry, privy to what we were talking about earlier before everyone got here. All right, projection mapping. I guess, is it loading? Let's see here. All right, can everyone see it?
No.
All right.
Wait. I can't see your screen.
I think most of us can see it. For some reason, your video is black right now, Mary.
Yeah.
This might be something on your end.
All right. So I have this wonderful image from online about projection mapping. In general, I guess everyone's familiar with projection mapping. I'm going to assume to some degree, like what they do on the castle or this here, this building. It's just a method of, using projectors and light to. I would consider it live Photoshop, honestly, if you're good at it. All right. So the workflow. Oh, here. Wait. Oh, yep. There it is. There's kind of a workflow to getting a projection mapping display completed. On the side, you can see we just have, I put it at 5. The most important one there is down at the bottom, setup and calibration, but you sort of have 5 steps depending on what project you want to make. Some of the projects you can get away with skipping a step or all of them. In my demonstration, I'm just going to skip straight to step 5 for a really easy, simple display. But for example, this video here, it's a really short video that just kind of shows the movement. But this, if it'll load, it's this one went through the entire design process. This was during my class at UT Austin. So anyways, let's see here. I'm just gonna all right, well, that's the thing. All right, so the first step is going to be your object design. It's kind of boring, but it's often figuring out what you're going to projection map. It's strange as that may seem. Sometimes that's a big question. And then so you're looking at possibly just getting a physical object that you already have and you know that you're going to use that. Or you might be designing an object, 3D printing it, making it. You might be involving 3D scanning. I don't do a whole lot of that myself, but there's a lot of good software I know about that you can get for those sorts of things. So anyways, you got to have some sort of model, or at the very least the object. Sometimes you don't actually need a computer version of the model. Sometimes you do. It really depends on what kind of calibration you need to do, and we'll talk about that at the end or later. And then preliminary mapping. So basically, this is often before you want to get into content creation, you kind of want to make sure that things work. So back when we first 3D printed our model in class, we were working in Disguise, and we went ahead and tried to make sure we could calibrate things because our model was, it's a little complicated in shape. So we got Shirtless George replicated 3 times on there. It was fun. Probably the best thing I've ever done in that class. So yeah, you're looking at doing some spatial tests, physical tests, spatial. This stage is often where I'll mess around with UV mapping. I don't know if anyone is familiar with what UV mapping is. It's a common thing if you've worked in Blender or Maya. So UV mapping is essentially taking a 3-dimensional object and unfolding it so that you have a 2D version that you can put 2D content on. Because some fancy software will allow you to directly paint content onto the 3D model, but the majority of them you need the way you would classically in like elementary school unfold a cube kind of thing that you can draw onto it, and then the computer will reassemble it. Also, there's a software called Mapping Matter. I can provide the link to that. I think I put it in the ladder. It's a computer software that allows you to do simulations of what your projection mapping might look like. It doesn't actually projection map, but it allows you to do photogrammetry, testing the lighting brightness, etc. Make sure you have the right number of projectors, that your angles will work, etc. Because it really sucks to get in there and realize that you don't have a good enough projector for what you're trying to do. So then the next step I usually go into is content creation. This can be as quick as just finding videos online and throwing it onto your stuff. Or if you're wanting to do something more intricate, you have a specific display, specific story, you're looking at using 3D software, Blender, Maya, Notch, After Effects, possibly recording video, and pretty much any software you're from. Whatever you know, that's what you can choose to try and create content. This is the most open-ended part, and sometimes if you're not going to be pulling anything externally and making it all yourself, this is going to be the longest step probably, because content creation can be very slow. So anyways, and then this is kind of an intermediate step for sometimes you'll need this. Especially if you are going to be doing have a 3D model of the object, you're going to need to do some compositing, where essentially you take your 3D content or your video content or whatever you're displaying on the object, and you crop it to fit your UV map. Actually, this is the UV map over here, and then this is the object that it maps to. So you'll need to make sure that all your content actually fits into the regions that match onto over here. And that's a fun process in itself. And for that one, you're again need a compositor. So Blender, Maya, After Effects, they all have built-in compositors. Well, After Effects really is just a compositor with a few extra stuff. So, you know. Then let's see here. Then the actual setup and calibration. So this is actually pulling out your projectors. Projector mounts, enclosures, power and data cables. You'd be surprised how annoying that can get. And that'll stop some of your displays from working if you don't have a long enough power cable. Really, yeah. And then projection mapping software of choice. So I guess I'm gonna do it now, is I'm gonna try and demo projection mapping. Let me see if I can change over real fast to my MadMapper software. Also, if anyone has any questions right now while I'm doing this, feel free to ask on anything that I've already mentioned.
So when you talk about choosing a projector, right? Like actually getting the hardware of the projector.
Yeah.
Those like pocket projectors, you know, the ones that like have a pretty limited shine space, but are still fully able to project a digital image. Are those usually pretty viable, or do you usually need to go, you know, classroom projector at worst?
I mean, I've used those. We use those. Actually, the projects you were looking at there in the what I was displaying, that's what I was using, was a Pico projector. So they're definitely good. It just depends on the kind of display you're making. If you have anything that you're talking a scale of a room, you're going to want a projector that matches the room. But for a small project that maybe just sits on a table, totally a small Pico projector will work. The problem with using them for bigger ones is their resolution tends to be kind of low. If you had one that has a really high resolution, that would be good. Also, their brightness is, both the resolution and brightness tend to be a little low on those things for room scale projects. But if you happen to have one that had a high enough brightness and resolution, it would be good. It's just as you start throwing it across the room, the brightness can be a little dim. And then especially when you have objects with lots of geometry and warpage to it, you'll see stretching where essentially you only get a couple pixels on a certain section of the object, and sometimes that's less than desirable. So yes and no. It again depends on what you're doing. And then of course, once you get outside, it gets even worse. If you're doing anything outside, you'll need a nice projector that's got a lot of resolution and brightness, a lot of brightness. All right, so all right, we got that showing up. this is the part that I am hoping will work, but I am not 100% certain that I can get this to show up well enough. All right. So behind me, I have two doors that I want to. There's two different basic projection calibration methods that are, there's the easy version, which is what I'm going to do first. First off, line things up. Try not to die while you're at it. All right, and then let me take this over where it has a better view. There we go. All right, so make sure my old projectors currently have like an auto calibration on mine. You're going to want to turn that off if it ever does that, because that gets in the way. Then make sure, of course, you're covering the entire object with the available space of the projector. And then, oh, that's lucky. What's happening here is MadMapper, there's two main panels I work in. There's the projector panel, which is this, you just set up the projector. And then there's the actual content calibration. So right now I just have red squares, or a red square. I'm going to use that to projection, or excuse me, keystone, I guess is what they usually refer to it, is keystoning, where you match up the edges just by dragging over here, and you should be able to see that it actually goes out to the content display and works there. So drag, and just take it to the corners, your object, and it's wanting to lock in. That's fine. That'll be a little off. And of course, you can see this is not like the most super accurate, but it's very quick and dirty and easy to do. So then I can do the other door. And for that one, I'm actually gonna, so this over here, this panel is the media, which tells you what's gonna be output to it. So I'm gonna make this other one, let's see here. There, I'll do just hue. Okay, well. All right, there we go. Now I've got two different colors. So you can see which is which, I think, hopefully, yes. And once you've done this, that's really basically all there is to this trick. After that, you can change what sort of media you want to apply. So, for example, or at least MadMapper makes it really easy to just hit apply media, and then boom. And we can also do images or video content, whatever you'd want to place on there. And then there's a queuing system to this thing, which I don't bother with. But that's the quick and dirty version of calibration. That's really all you need to know in that form. The second form of calibration is where you have a 3D model that you're actually telling the computer, here's where my 3D model is in space relative to the projector. And that one, you're going to want to use that one when you have objects that are really detailed and have a lot of geometry to them that would be difficult for you to go through and try and make little rectangles for every single part of it. So with that one, let's see here. I have a cube that I will try in projection map. I'm not sure we can make my cube visible. Yeah, there's my cube. All right, I got to adjust the projector what it's pointing at. All right, so for this one, we're going to clear out our geometries over here. And then it's different for different softwares as to how they go about having you do this, but they essentially always have some way to import 3D objects. So over here we have some estimation of our cube. It's entirely just what it automatically generated. And as you can see over in the lighting, it's way off. It doesn't match at all. So you have to calibrate that. So let's see here. MadMapper and most softwares will provide you, when it comes to the geometry, it'll provide you a way to like estimate kind of the rotation and location of this. So for example, I could take it to it. That's a ZX. That's an X-axis rotation. So you can try and kind of estimate, since you know what it looks like relative to the projector, but this is just an estimation. You can actually usually skip this step. It's just sometimes really handy if you have a really complicated model, and so it's difficult to keep track of all the vertices. So having it somewhat close to what the projector is already seeing is nice. But then we want to actually do a calibration. So I go over calibrate. And again, the interface is going to look different for different softwares, but the method of calibration is point calibration is pretty much always the same. So what you do in pretty much every software is it provides you ability to select a point. So you'll select a point on the model. And I have on the screen, I have this version and I can drag it around. And then I don't know if it's showing up. Well, it's sort of probably showing up. Not really. Let me see if I can. There is a point that is actually showing up on the actual model itself. Let me see if I can pull my phone up to actually stream that. Sorry, just a moment. So anyways, the idea is you're going to be dragging these points to where they exist in physical space with the projector. So I usually don't actually look at my computer screen. I'm looking at what the projector is showing me. And then once you've got all of your points in the correct location, you usually only need to get about 5 or 6 points that are orthogonal to each other in space. They can't all be on the same plane because then it essentially gives them no extra data. So what? Oh, shit. All right. Let's see here. I don't know if you guys can see my video feed on my phone. It's not even showing me my. All right, there we go. All right, so yeah, I don't know if you guys are gonna have to search for my profile on there, but it's a little bit better video quality. You can see the dot moving. So thank you, Jack. So you're gonna move dots in line. I'm gonna try and get. Two. This could be quite difficult with this MadMapper software. My one complaint is that even for me, the points that show up on the projector aren't they're not super visible. I wish they were more highlighted rather than being a single pixel with a black circle. And then let's see here, I'm getting close. There we go. All right, and you can see that now that I've got 6 points in, it kind of jumped just to where it should be approximately. You can see it's a little off, and that's partially because my angle is really, I have a really tight angle, not the best angle for projecting, so there's a lot of, it increases error. But the other thing is you just kind of can fiddle with, as I move the there we go, that locked in a lot better. So yeah, as you move the calibration points a little bit, you might see that it improves the mapping of it. So now I can walk around it, and I've got all 3 angles of the front faces of this cube pretty well mapped. And so from there, then you can do the exact same thing where you throw up whatever content. So it's gonna work. Oh, that's, oh, yep, I realized what I'm forgetting. All right. Let me work with one that's a little bit more visible. All right, it is calibrated. I'm gonna hit fix calibration to lock that in. Then we don't want to see that. Don't need to see that. And we want to see the texture. So now it will show up whatever content. I enjoy always putting like videos of like hummingbirds flying on boxes, or like, it makes me think of, what is it? Living with the Land. I always enjoy just kind of putting videos of that kind of stuff on boxes. But anyways, that's the general gist of calibration. Let me jump back on over to the slides real fast. Not screen sharing. Any more questions while I'm again changing over? All right, well, anyways. So also I can provide the link to this video. It goes through the same process, but with a robotic voice that they had do it. Let's see here. And yeah, it changes for a little bit from program to program, but you can see that it would be largely the same. So I'm going to go quickly through your option, or at least here are the options that I have worked with for projection mapping. There's actually a website you can go to that lists more options, like a lot. There's a Projection Mapping Central. They have a lot of options for like various different softwares, and they'll give you some more pros and cons. But here's some of my experience with what I've done. So MadMapper, that's the one I'm currently working in here. It is it's relatively cheap. Their licenses are you can rent it monthly for like $40, or you can buy it outright for about 500. It's cheaper like compared to the other ones. Easy to use, and then it provides a 3D calibration. Actually, all of these provide the 3D object calibrations, which is really nice. But it does not provide as much edge blending and some other stuff. So doing dual projectors, and when you start doing really advanced stuff with multiple projectors, that can get very complicated very quickly with MadMapper. Touch Designer, this one is probably the most powerful software I will mention. And it is free-ish. They do have a license, but the free version is so usable that I've never bought a license. And it works off of a node-based workflow. So if anyone's familiar with materials in Blender or Maya, or gosh, Notch, I think has a node-based workflow as well. And so does Nuke, I think. Anyways, so it's kind of confusing initially. But yeah, you can do a lot of stuff with this one. You can do multi-projectors, you can do various blendings, all sorts of content creation. The issue with this one is the way it works can it'll run all your RAM and all your CPU very quickly. And yeah, it's a little complicated. As you can see here in the background, the thing I've got, it allows for coding and scripting, which is incredibly useful as well. MadMapper does not support scripting. So that's, real fast. This is kind of what you can get, or well, you can get almost anything, but this is one of the projects I did where I projection mapped the hands on a clock. So yeah, for that one, the majority of it was just setting up the clock hands and content creation essentially. And then a very small amount of it was actually mapping things to fit the face of the clock. All right, let's see here. Disguise, this is the one I worked in my class at UT Austin. It used to be called D3. It's incredibly easy to use. Well, it's as easy, if not easier, than MadMapper. It can do a lot. It can do multi-projectors. It can do various edge blendings, all sorts of things. But it's a little expensive. And when I say a little expensive, I think the licenses are, maybe $700 for a month or something. It's incredibly expensive. And that's not including they require a dongle to go with the license, and the USB dongle to plug in the computer is literally $150 just for that. It doesn't even get you the license. It just gets you the ability to use a license. So I don't actually own this one. I would if I could afford it, but that's not happening. But it's really powerful, and it allows all sorts of easy things like perspective mapping is where this image or video over here, this is a project I did where the house is a physical house that is set outwards, but by using perspective mapping, I can open up the house. So I'll briefly show off a little bit of this. Also, this is all my content creation. This took longer than I should have done. But yeah, you can get some cool tricks with disguise. All right, well, I won't bore you with the rest of that, but you guys get the idea. Lightform. This is one I actually haven't used myself pretty much at all, but I figured I'd mention it since they've been producing a really large market recently, and they're pretty usable for first time. They're also very unique in their focus. Lightform is essentially what they're selling is hardware that has built-in projection mapping software in it. And it allows you to, it's got like a Kinect kind of spatial scanner where it will scan the region you're projecting on and then allow you to projection map off of that. So it will automatically scan. You don't have to do any like modeling or UV mapping. It automatically scans what's in front of it. And then you can apply content based off of the point cloud or three-dimensional geometries that it generates. So yeah, I've seen it and barely messed with it. And as far as I can tell, it's pretty easy to use. The main issue, well, the main issue is it's kind of set up for single-use displays or like smaller, like if you had a store or whatever where you wanted a particular thing that was just eye-catching, but you're not looking at creating a complicated show, this is a great option. But the moment you want to do anything more, such as produce large videos or like light show displays, sync it up with other things. It's single projector. I don't think it supports edge blending even. So it's kind of limited in that form. So if you were asking any professionals out there who do projection mapping for a living, I would imagine they don't mess with this much. But it does actually, there is a version of this that Disguise has called OmniCal. I haven't messed with that either, but it is a camera scanning based application where it will calibrate automatically based off of scanning the region. And I think, yeah, that's all I have at this moment. So I can get, there's some links I'm realizing missing, but I guess at this point I'm opening it to questions because there's a lot to this process. But I imagine only certain parts are interesting to certain people. So feel free to ask whatever is what you're curious about.
First off, thank you, Ian, for sharing. This is pretty cool. You talked a lot here about software links, and I know you answered a question earlier a little bit about projectors, but do you have any suggestions for like how to get started if, you know, like you don't have a projector just sitting around that you can use? Any suggestions on, you know, ways to get started in that regard?
Yeah, that's a good question. So again, it depends on what kind of displays you want to be making. So there's for smaller displays, you usually want smaller projectors, bigger displays, bigger projectors. However, one thing I will mention, this is just not directly useful to choosing a projector, but I recommend checking out your college surplus. They often get rid of projectors for dirt cheap. That's where I got my projectors. They're good projectors, and they came at maybe a quarter of the price because they were just looking to get rid of them. Yeah, I don't know. Again, it really depends on the installation you're looking at. But if you were just looking to start out, I would recommend getting just a simple home projector. Pico projector, like was mentioned earlier, might be a good idea if you want to start with just table stuff. You can get away with using a Pico on even room map and stuff if you're willing to. If you're just looking to experiment, it just won't be as high quality, I guess.
Makes sense. And then any projector can link into the software. Like there's nothing like special about the projector required for projection mapping, correct?
No, any projector will work. All the various, they set it up as a monitor essentially in terms of the outputs for most of them. You just kind of say it's technically a projector, but it's treated in the computer as a monitor. The one exception being Lightform, because of their hardware, they actually sell projectors with the hardware built into it. So, but you can also buy it separate where they have the hardware outside and then you buy your own projector.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there other questions out there still? I guess the one, I just wish we had a class like this at Notre Dame. That's awesome that you had the chance to take this as a course.
I feel the same.
Yeah, that was actually really fun. Unfortunately, yeah, pandemic kind of got in the way, but yeah, it's I'm sure other colleges have it. You might have to look through the other departments because it's certainly not going to be in the engineering department. For us, it's located under the arts and entertainment department, which is under like fine arts, I want to say, but it might exist. It's just a matter of searching, perhaps. Other than that, yeah, it was fun.
Awesome. Any last questions for Ian here? All right. No worries. If you do think of one, just give him a shout on the Discord. I'm sure he'll be able to hop right on that. And if you're, getting started on projection mapping, definitely please share, some projects you guys might put together with us. Those will be cool to see. Other than that, thank you everybody for stopping by today. There will be no session next week. Obviously, next Thursday is Christmas Eve. So, enjoy the holidays. Please don't be sitting on a Zoom call on Christmas Eve. But with that, I'll just say, have a great night and enjoy the holiday season.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch, Jane. This is a great presentation.